Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome into the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to have you with us as always. It's conference championship weekend. We're getting into it. I'm your host, Sasha Bushka, joined by the head of football operations, Cody Alexander, and the Mike Pereira of Field Vision Sports, Scott Bushka. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Mike Pereira.
Greatest invention since the yellow line, according to himself.
What's the greatest invention since the yellow line?
Mike Pereira said that, I believe, during the Commanders-Lions broadcast.
That what was the greatest invention since the yellow line?
Oh,
he was. He had a problem with the yellow line because he was the greatest invention since it, and it's been a big debate which is a better invention.
Well, let me say two things. One, I'm in an amazing mood today, and you can't ruin it because it's a crisp sunny Wednesday morning in January. The Chiefs are playing in the AFC Championship game. Field Vision is on fire. We got momentum everywhere. So I'm not going to let you get my mood down. I did think I was going to get the Erlich Bachman of Field Vision this morning, which I was like pretty pumped about. I'm not as pumped about Mike Pereira.
I had to go with a famous referee in honor of like the Twitter sphere conversation about the referees and the Chiefs.
The ridiculous hysteria around the referees, which is over a roughing the passer call on 2nd and 4. Yeah.
I actually, when I was thinking about referees to go with, I was like, I got to find like the referee that's considered the most Chiefs homer, like the one that cheats for the Chiefs the most, and go with that. But I thought that'd be too difficult to figure out. Like they just think every referee is on the Chiefs payroll. So
I would have preferred the OG celebrity referee, which was Ed Hockley, for the size of his biceps. Yeah, Gene Steratore is another good one.
It came down to Mike Pereira or Gene Steratore pretty much. So
all right, let's move on.
Anyways, let's get into it. We got two big games this weekend: Eagles Commanders and Chiefs Bills in the conference championship games. We'll take a moment though off the top here to look at the teams who got eliminated, just because that's what we always do: look back, then look forward. And then we have a special treat in the second half of the show for you guys today. We're going to take you behind the Field Vision curtain. Instead of just giving you each of our picks, we're going to let you sit in on a Field Vision best bets meeting and throw these picks into the app. So you'll get kind of behind the scenes action there. But we'll start with kind of the two marquee teams, and we'll start on the NFC side. The Lions, everybody's Super Bowl favorite. They were the Super Bowl favorite in Vegas as well. A lot of injuries on defense, lose by 14 points to the Commanders in a game that didn't turn out to be that close. And now Ben Johnson has already been named head coach of the Chicago Bears. Aaron Glenn may be close to being named head coach of the New York Jets. Going to lose both coordinators. What's next for the Detroit Lions in this ascension?
Well, I mean, they're going to have to find somebody to continue that offensive prowess. I mean, that they're going to have to replace Ben Johnson. I think that's going to be the number one. Defensive coordinator, I really like Aaron Glenn. I hope he does. If he does get a head coaching job, I hope he does really well as, kind of a leader of men. The defense, though, we've talked about it here on this show. Can they make the change up? He has shown that he was willing to change, but you just saw in that game when Amick Robertson went down, it was like, okay, finally the whole house of cards collapsed. Then you get who was it? Brian Branch goes down, and now it's like even worse. It just exacerbated the problem. So when you go up against an offense, and especially an offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury that has a deep bag from the passing game, was able to take advantage of that secondary. But that to me is going to be it. Look, They're not going to have the injury luck they had 2 years in a row. So the defense is going to be fine, but that offensive coordinator hire for Dan Campbell, that's going to be the number one thing. If he's not studying right now, then he's in trouble.
Yeah. I'm worried about the Lions.
Me too.
And the reason is losing 2 coordinators can be jarring. And it's one thing if you have a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson playing quarterback. It's an entirely other thing when most people have come to understand that Ben Johnson is the wizard behind that offense, not Jared Goff, right? And we don't have to look that much farther than the Philadelphia Eagles coming out of the 2022 Super Bowl, right? To see a team that was dominant, a team that went to the Super Bowl, a team that lost 2 coordinators and really struggled the following season, right? And they managed to so they lost Gannon and they lost why am I blanking on the name of the Colts coach?
Steichen.
They lost Gannon and they lost Steichen, right? They didn't do a good job replacing him. They tried to replace him in-house and it didn't work. And the Eagles, because they're a really smart organization, righted the ship in 1 year. Like they basically said, okay, we messed this up. We're not going to mess it up again. And they went in and brought in a couple of veterans from outside. But the Lion, like Campbell's got to get those coordinator hires right. And it's not that is like sounds simple. It's not a super easy thing to do, right? And it's actually like easier to do once you've messed it up. So I think it was easier for the Eagles to know what they needed once they saw what they put in and it didn't work. So yeah, I remember everyone loved Nick Sirianni after that Super Bowl loss. A year later, everyone hated him and thought he was an idiot, right? And so like I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you could be a year away from people thinking that Dan Campbell's rah-rah, 4th down, go for it every time is BS because the Lions aren't winning as much.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That to your point with Dan Campbell, his personality, if everybody goes back, let's roll the clock back to his very first press conference. People were laughing, right? Bite your kneecaps. Okay. A year from now, if they're sitting here and they're 6-11 and they can't figure it out and Goff turns back into a pumpkin, there's a possibility where now everybody turns on you because that's just the way the world works.
Yeah, Scott brought up a point there too. It's a hard thing to do when you're having a ton of success to not go from within and promote guys that are already there because you have the successful culture, the successful organization, but also like Sirianni clearly needed like veteran coordinators because he wasn't a strong enough schematic head coach to not have the best coordinators around. So promoting from within wasn't a smart thing. And Dan Campbell is like everybody loves him right now as a culture coach and a tone setter, but we don't know exactly what he is as a schematic head coach because everybody assumes it's all Ben Johnson on the offense and mostly Aaron Glenn on the defense. And so maybe they need to not go from within and bring guys in that can do the right thing. The other thing I've seen mentioned a little bit is it's a different animal for Dan Campbell to tackle next year because everything in his 4 years there has been an ascent, coming from the bottom, getting better each year. And you can't go up from 15-2 really. Like you could a little bit, but you can't really go up from 15-2. So now it's how do we maintain this success and give ourselves another chance to make this run in the playoffs versus we're the underdogs. Nobody believes in us. Let's go bite some kneecaps. Like, how do we stay up here? And they're going to have to really be careful not to have a fall off in the regular season next year. And maybe they do fall off a little bit, get in as a wild card, and then make a run that nobody's expecting after a year where they went out a lot earlier than everyone was expecting. But time will tell on that. Let's dive into the AFC side of this. And it's a little bit different situation because they do have They're probably not losing coordinators. They have the head coach that's been there forever, and they have the star quarterback in place, and that's the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. It's another early playoff exit for them. Last year they made the AFC Championship game. This year they're a rung short of that. It's a big question mark as to what the Ravens can really do differently other than just roll it back, have a great regular season, and hope it's different in the playoffs. But one thing that that I've heard talked about a lot is how young Lamar is, and he's only 28, and like Peyton Manning didn't win a Super Bowl till he's in his 30s and stuff. I kind of refute that argument because Lamar is clearly in his prime. And one thing guys don't do in their 30s is get faster and get more athletic.
Right.
And like a lot of people aren't talking about the fact that he's not going to have a Tom Brady length career. He's not going to be out there when he's 45 running away from people. So he might have like a 3 or 4 more year window at the peak of his athleticism left to really get it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't. To me, Baltimore is it's a completely different story from Detroit because unless Todd Monken gets a head coaching job, which I know he's interviewed some places, but people don't think he's going to. Like, I don't know what you do if you're the Ravens. Like they were in the same position last year and they added Derrick Henry, and that clearly helped. But they lost some folks on their defense, and that clearly hurt. But it's tough to say what do you do to become better because their last 2 seasons from an EPA standpoint, I think were 2 of the top 6 seasons in terms of generating EPA the NFL's ever seen, right? And they have 0 Super Bowls to show for it and 1 AFC championship. So for them, I think it actually is it's a harder off season because you're saying like, I don't know what we can do better. We just have to hope Mark Andrews catches the ball in the playoffs next year, and we have to hope that Lamar doesn't turn it over twice.
Yeah, to me, that's the thing. Now, what I will say is they probably need to find a third receiver that's a legitimate third receiver in case, because attrition, whether Bateman or Flowers goes down. I did think it hurt them a little bit, the fact that Flowers wasn't out there playing. Flowers kind of changes that offense a little bit but like you're saying, you're literally, Scott, you're looking for the edge. Right. You're on the precipice, but how can we get over the edge? How can we get that edge that makes us different to where we're not just a regular season juggernaut? Because it's going to be the same question that Detroit's going to have to answer, but they're kind of in a conundrum because their brain trust is now gone. We saw what that looked like this year with the Ravens, especially on defense. It took about half a year for Orr to really settle in. A lot of people don't talk about this, but hiring Dean Pease to come in and be that senior analyst for Orr that he can bounce ideas off of, an established defensive coordinator that knows that system. So to me, I think offensively, they're going to be fine. Defensively, they're going to be fine. They need to find a corner. They probably need to find another receiver. And then obviously the attrition part, but that's going to be the key. Is it a mental thing? That's what they're going to have to see is what is we mentally, how can we get there? Because I had this conversation with a coaching buddy of mine about this game, and it's like Lamar pulled the Lamar. It's just like every year. You go and watch the fumble, him just not securing the ball, and then the pick, him throwing. It's clearly throw away from the middle, from the post safety. He throws it down the numbers instead of throwing it to the sideline. The receiver actually converted the route to perfect. When you get cover 3, you don't run to the post, you run, and once you stack the corner, you run to the sideline. Lamar just throws it, and you can see the frustration on him. He knows he made those mistakes. So it wasn't like, because if you go back and look at it, the Bills didn't really stop them. They stopped themselves. I think that's going to be the key next year is the mental part.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I agree 100%, Cody, and I think people are being way too easy on Lamar. And it's hard to be on social media platforms this week and feel like there's any semblance of rationality because like you've got all the stuff going on with Chiefs and the refs and everything else. But like the general consensus is that Lamar played awesome and they lost because bad luck that Mark Andrews dropped a pass. Like I don't want to say I couldn't disagree more, but I disagree. You cannot turn the ball over twice in the first half. You can't be down 21-10 to the Bills at home. And Lamar is the reason they were down 21-10 with the Bills at home. And he can't, like, if he expects to win games like that, you can't turn the ball over. And that's what Patrick Mahomes learned a long time ago in the postseason is like, I got to play flawless football, and I'm not going to take these crazy chances unless I really have to because we're down 10 in the game, right? And so Lamar didn't do what he needed to do to win, And Sasha, I think your point is a really great one. Like, sure, Lamar could extend his career by becoming more of a pocket passer, and I think he has the ability to do that. But when you do that, you lose the thing that's unique about Lamar, right? And so all of a sudden, like, they're not going to have the dynamic offense that they have. So, yeah, I don't know what they do, but I agree that there's a chance their window is shorter than people think.
Yeah, in many ways, the Ravens are set up better for regular season success last year than they were this year because like Zach Orr's got a year under his belt on the job. He progressed as a defensive coordinator throughout the season. You could see their defense got way better. So they'll be good in the regular season next year. But like, I'm not sure it's a huge deal. But if you're the Ravens, what you don't want is an AFC team to win the Super Bowl because that means it's either Patrick Mahomes has another Super Bowl under his belt and that monster in the room just gets that much bigger that you can't overcome, or it's Josh Allen now has a Super Bowl and you've got two guys that have all this postseason confidence and you're sitting there and never having gotten it done. And like the more momentum the Chiefs and the Bills build as playoff teams, the harder it becomes for Lamar to overcome that in the postseason. And that's all the season comes down to for the Ravens. Like I have no doubt they're going to be a great team next year in the regular season. They'll probably win the AFC North unless like the Bengals finally pull their head out and decide to make the playoffs and have a good regular season. But he's going to be fighting an uphill battle in the playoffs until he can do it because he's not going to have the same confidence that a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen does.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the comp for Lamar right now is going to be Dan Marino, except for Dan Marino actually got to go to one Super Bowl. But you go and you look at it, John Elway won 2, Jim Kelly went to 4. Now he didn't win anybody, went to 4. He dominated the AFC in the 90s. So it's like, to me, it's like that's the thing with Lamar. That's going to be the story. Look, everybody loves at this year, hey, he's the MVP. You're not a ball knower if you say anything bad about him. And look, he's great. He's great in the regular season. He looks good in like the wild card round. But man, you get into crunch time and he goes up against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Look, we saw this with Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady almost ruined Peyton Manning's career, right? I mean, it's like him going to all those Super Bowls, Peyton Manning not going to any, finally gets over the hump, finally wins the Super Bowl. It was like the amount of pressure release off of him was tremendous. And so that's the thing. I know Lamar's one of the better quarterbacks, probably he's the greatest running quarterback to ever play. And like, you would love to see him win a Super Bowl, but it's like at this point, he does have time, like you said, Sasha, but his skill set is not pocket passing. So it's how is he going to transition from that to being more of a pocket passer as people start catching up speed wise?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the two comparisons. Is like he either becomes Peyton Manning, who like was great early, won 5 MVPs. Lamar might win 5 MVPs, and then won some Super Bowls late in his career, including his last season. And like he has the 2, and he's probably a top 5 quarterback of all time, easily top 10. Or he becomes Dan Marino, which is still a great comparison. People love Dan Marino. He was like the first of his generation, greatest passer early in his. So he's one of those two guys in the historical comparisons, but I feel like, or that's what he'll become, assuming he has a few more years at the level he's had. But I feel like people treat Lamar with kid gloves a little bit. Like any other quarterback, like people, if Josh Allen loses this week to the Chiefs, they're going to say like he can't get it done. And Josh Allen's actually been good in the playoffs, but they're going to put him at least a notch below Patrick Mahomes because he always loses to him in the playoffs. It's like people want to just pretend like Lamar's the best quarterback in football, but that's not how it works for quarterbacks. Like you can win all the MVPs you want. You've got to win Super Bowls. You've got to go far in the playoffs. If for any other quarterback all time to be considered the best in your era, the best of your generation.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
All right.
Right now it's tracking more in my mind. It's tracking more like Mahomes is Brady, Allen's Peyton Manning, and Lamar's Marino. I know Marino's from a different generation.
It's kind of like across eras. It never works out perfectly like that.
If you want to go to Lamar's Phillip Rivers.
If you want to go to basketball, like Lamar's Charles Barkley or
Ewing, right?
Or Ewing, one of those guys who couldn't get over the Jordan hump. But we'll see. They all still have a lot of careers left, and I even heard it talked about today is like maybe Josh Allen wins this game, and Lamar gets a Super Bowl down the line, and we look back 10 years from now and we say Mahomes dominated the early part of this era, and then those guys like caught up with them later in their careers. But
Totally
you just have to
possible.
wait and see. Yeah,
Totally possible. One of them's got to beat him first.
let's go
Yeah.
quick on these next two teams. Texans obviously lost to the Chiefs. Stroud had a sophomore slump. There's no getting around it. Everybody thought he was going to be in the elite tier after his rookie year. Do you see him bouncing back and looking more like he did as a rookie in year 3? And this year was kind of an anomaly.
If they clean up the offensive line. But to me, they had a plan early with Diggs, Dell, and Collins. Collins has that weird hamstring pull. I mean, first game of the season looked like Nico Collins might go for 2,000 yards receiving, and he had that hamstring pull, didn't come back. Then you have the thing with Diggs where he essentially your possession receiver, your crossing route receiver is gone. Now you got Dell, who you can't. He's really a deep threat. It's kind of like a Jameis Williams, and then too like Slovic. Look, man, just because you have a carbon copy of the playbook doesn't mean that you're going to end up being – he's going to have to evolve too, but the protection schemes are going to have to get better. We saw that this year. That's exactly what a quarterback looks like when he's scared to death that the moment that he plants his foot in the ground, he's going to get smacked.
Yeah. Stroud's got to prove that he can adjust better and adjust on the fly better. And maybe a little humble brag, or at the start of the year, everyone was so high on the Texans, and last year defenses were really vanilla against him. I think he had the highest percentage of cover 3 played in the entire NFL against him. And I said really early on before the start of the season, I think you're going to see defenses start to mix it up a lot more, get a lot more creative, start playing some quarters, playing some cover 2, mixing up blitz packages, etc. That's exactly what we saw. And even though the Texans line is not good, I also think we didn't see Stroud deal with pressure well at all. Yeah. Right? Like even late in that game, some of those sacks that he took, you can't take. And like some of his and look, Spags is tough, but like his ability to see and diagnose the blitz and do the right thing against it, it leaves something to be desired. So I think he's a good quarterback. I think we could see a comeback, but he's got to show his ability to adjust a little bit better than he did this year.
Yeah, and I think he does that. Like I think he's got a whole offseason to go back to the drawing board, figure things out. Slowick's going to have to make adjustments too, like Cody said. But the Texans will be someone. They'll still be the favorites in the AFC South next year, and they'll be someone to deal with. But they haven't graduated into the tier with the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs like people thought they might this year. And we'll just see if they can do that next year. Last team that went out, the LA Rams. The Rams had a good season. They made the divisional round. They gave a good fight against the Eagles. Jalen Carter doesn't get that sack on third down, and we might be having a completely different conversation. But the Rams are a little long in the tooth on offense at a lot of key spots, especially with Matthew Stafford. Do you think they can just keep – they're young on defense, so they should get better there. But do we see significant changes on the offensive side this offseason for the Rams? I think Stafford's going to be back, but like you might see Cooper Kupp on a different team and try to get younger there and complement Puka another way. What do we see from the Rams this offseason?
Yeah, I think Kupp is probably gone. I was looking at it yesterday. They can save a ton of money by moving on from him. I know he's got a couple of years in his deal, but they can kind of mitigate some of the cap problems that they typically have because they pay a lot of those guys on offense. You know, again, need to fix the offensive line a little bit. I think defensively, for whatever reason, they are really weird about linebackers, but they need a high quality linebacker. They let Bobby Wagner walk, who's still playing really well. They let the kid that's at Seattle, Ernest Jones. That whole saga where they didn't want to pay him, and so they traded him, and then he got traded again. And he actually played really well for Seattle. So that to me is a position of need. They need a corner too. They're going to have to they may have to dip into free agency and bring some guys back on defense, which is something that they just don't do.
Yeah, Sasha, you You called out the sack to Jalen Carter, but one thing I think that people are maybe not giving enough credence to this week is just how close that game was and how much like there was a moment 3rd and 3 from like the 15-yard line for the Rams where you're like the Rams are gonna win this game. Like the Eagles are gonna lose, and then Carter comes up with that sack, and the rest is history. But that game was close. There was a point where you thought the Rams were gonna win. The only reason I bring that up is if I'm the Rams, I am thrilled about the way this year played out. Right, like they've got a young defense that's going to be ascending for a long time. And they are long in the tooth on offense, but they effectively like replaced Cup with Nakua, which is really hard to do. And so like the only thing that they got to figure out is Stafford's old. And they got to figure like is he gonna be Tom Brady and be able to play into his 40s or not? But I think they're pumped with the season and should be really excited about the direction ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this, but I want to ask this question because I think it frames what people really think about the Rams. And be quick on your answers, but I'll let you both go. You get to pick one team from the NFC West next year, Rams or 49ers. Who do you think is going to be a better team?
Rams.
I like the 49ers because I think their defensive roster is better.
Yeah, I think the 49ers, they throw up one of these seasons every few years where they have a lot of injuries and it just starts rolling the wrong way. But I think they bounce back and they're really good next year. So
I know you don't want to talk a lot about it, and we don't need to talk about it a lot. All I will say is the 49ers are in a lot more cap trouble than people think. And they are also long in the tooth. They're paying a bunch of guys who are aging and on their way in the opposite direction. So the Rams are in a lot better situation there than they are, is the only thing I would say.
Yeah, there is the factor too that the Rams haven't paid Purdy yet, and that'll be changing. Although even if they give him the extension this offseason, that probably won't kick in until the next season because he'll have one more year on his rookie deal. So let's leave that conversation and head into this weekend. We're gonna go to looking forward before the break, so we can do picks after. We'll do the Chiefs Bills last, so we'll start with the Eagles and Commanders. Scott mentioned it, but the Eagles were like a marquee play from Jalen Carter away from potentially losing to the Rams this past weekend, and they did it pretty much all on the ground again. So I'll just ask you this. I think the Commanders are going to score with them a little bit. Do the Eagles need to get their passing game going into a semblance of like something that resembles a strong playoff team in order to beat the Commanders?
100%. This is a team like you can't play this. We saw, you know what, the prime example. National championship. The Notre Dame was going to play the national championship like an academy team. They were going to run the ball. That first drive, that's exactly what they want to do. Bleed the clock, run the ball.
First drive.
Be efficient.
Punching people in the mouth.
The problem with that is what we saw is that if you're not in the lead, the moment you go down or you get a couple stops, you've got to start throwing the ball. Can you do that? Notre Dame was able to pass the ball efficiently in the end, but at that point it was a little too late. The Eagles can't get in that situation. We almost saw this against the Rams where the Rams were able to start scoring the ball late in the game. They had really no answer from the passing game. You have to get the passing game going in order to beat the Commanders. This is a different team than what you're going to see from the Rams.
Yeah, I'm confused by this game and what I think is going to happen, which we'll get into in best bets. Because the only reason I will say that is we haven't seen, or it's very, very rare to be a Super Bowl team that has been this questionable or loose at quarterback. You could go back to the Eagles 2 years ago, but I would argue like Hurts was playing much more efficiently in the passing game than he is right now. With that being said, this Philadelphia defense is a totally different animal than that Lions defense, and it's a totally different animal than that Tampa Bay defense. And we've seen them against, like, there's a familiarity here. We've seen them against Daniels before and seen him struggle. The Commanders did beat them last time they played, but let's remember Jalen Hurts got concussed midway through that second quarter, and it was a different game after that. So I do think that Hurts is struggling a lot in the passing game. I also think that this is going to be a different challenge for a rookie in Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, Fangio's going to be all over this. He's going to give them a bunch of different looks. Kingsbury's going to have to get some things going on underneath. But is that sustainable? Are you going to be okay with getting 5-yard hitches and 5-yard crossing routes that are tackled immediately once you catch the ball? How well is this run game going to be? I know that's one of the things that has been really well is Kingsbury with Anthony Lynn, that pairing. No one's talking about that enough, but the pairing of Anthony Lynn by Quinn with Cliff to give him a real run game has really paid off because it expands that offense. I just don't know, can they win inside, and are they going to be able to run enough in order to really be kind of efficient on offense?
Yeah, I'll kind of shift gears here a little bit. I was going to ask you like Eagles defensive strategy, Cody, to slow down Jaden Daniels, and you can get into that more if you want. But let's look bigger picture. Nothing seems too big for Jaden Daniels. Do you think Fangio throws enough at him that there's any potential for him to get rattled in this game?
To me, he's a little different. Like a lot of people were talking about Stroud last year and how cool, calm, and collected he was. But again, it goes back to what Scott was talking about. Teams just really didn't know. And a lot of teams thought they could just beat the Texans last year. I think the Browns found that out that, oh, hey, we can just show up, run a bunch of cover 3, we'll be fine. Kind of hit him in the mouth. But to me, I think Daniels poses a different problem. I mean, he is just his ability to run changes the game, and it changes the math for a defense. Fangio is going to have to figure out a way. That was one of the big factors in their win later in the year, was the fact that he could go off and run. And with that run game dies, he can kind of carry the load. Fangio is going to have to get him into things where he's doubting what he's seen. That's what's going to be the key. Doubt what he's seeing. Can we keep everything underneath? They were able to kind of they took advantage of man coverage. I mean, Cliff went full Big 12 on the Lions. I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Fangio.
Yeah. For whatever it's worth, Jaden Daniels has 9 picks this year. 3 of them are against the Eagles in 2 games. So in 2 games, a third of his picks are against the Eagles.
Flipping it to the other side, Washington has been known for their offense all year. Their defense was actually ended up kind of middle of the pack. It wasn't as bad as people thought it was going to be early. But what is Washington's defensive strategy to slow down the Eagles' run game and make them one-dimensional?
Yeah, they did some things against the Lions that I thought were really clever. They put Luvu on the tight end, and then they dropped Chin down. They ran a lot of big nickel. I think they're going to get the same thing. The difference is that the Eagles will spread you out. So it's more of a spread to run concept, which changes things for them. They're going to try and play some zone and keep a cap on those receivers, eyes on the backfield, so that maybe they can get that. The question is going to be, can that defensive line disrupt enough? I thought the Rams couldn't disrupt in the run game. They were disruptive in the passing game. Are the Commanders going to be able to manufacture that? I don't think they will at the same rate as the Rams.
So just a philosophical question, Cody. We see Saquon breaking off these 60-yarders week after week after week, and that's how he ends up with 200 yards in the game, is they come on 2 carries, half of them do. At some point, does a defense just say hey, we're going to let you run the ball 5 yards down the field every play if you want to, and if you can score that way, more power to you, without ever getting a penalty or a turnover or anything like that. But we're not going to let you break off a 75-yard run against us.
Yeah, I think that's I still when you're playing a spread to run team and a team that is willing to run on third down if you're going to get into situations. I mean, the one long touchdown against the Rams, they put 2 linebackers in the B gap, and they were and that's the famous one where, I don't know if you've seen the viral video where he turns to Hurd and says, "Watch this." He knew he was going to go score because he knew that offensive line was going to go blow those 2 linebackers off the ball, and he was going to be able to run for a touchdown. I think you're right. I think You have to stop Saquon. You have to force Hurts to win. And then you have to play some zone, which Quinn has pivoted to since being with the Commanders. You have to play some zone in order to protect yourself from Brown.
Yeah. The problem is, Sasha, if you play that way against the Eagles, they will gladly just run the ball on every down and take 4 downs and have an 11 to 12 to 13-minute drive like they did against Pittsburgh in the second half of that game. So that's the only thing that worries me about that strategy. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'll go look it up in terms of where the Commanders rank in rush DVOA on defense. But the Eagles rushed for 228 and 211 yards in the 2 games that they played against them. So they're gonna run the ball and run it a lot.
There is, though, like that aspect of, like, if you have an 11-minute drive, but for some reason kick a field goal or fumble at the end of it, it actually backfires against you. And like even in that game against the Rams, the Eagles had a half-yard line 4th and goal where they false started on a tush push and ended up having to kick a field goal. So like things happen. The more plays you make them run, the more chances are there's a holding penalty and then they have to throw at some point, or Jalen Hurts throws an interception or fumbles, or they get a penalty on a tush push. So it's just like make them do that. Make them have the grind. I think it's a better alternative than Saquon just running it down your throat for 65 yards.
100%.
Totally. Jahmyr Gibbs was 14 for 105 last week. The Lions win that game if they just give the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs 30 times.
Yeah,
like I don't quite understand why they didn't and why Johnson got so far away from that. But
that game was basically over when the Lions went down 2 scores because they weren't getting any stops on defense. And so it was like, and then when Goff throws the pick 6 in the first half, and then it was either the next possession or 2 possessions later, throws the pick in the end zone.
Yeah.
Would have pulled them to within 3 at halftime. Like when they went in down 10 and the Commanders were getting the ball first, it was like, when are they ever going to get 2 stops in a row to turn this in their favor?
Yep.
Right. But not to, I know we need to move on and we could talk, but not to exhaust this, but that game was 7-7, 3rd and 1 with the Lions on the Commanders 20-yard line going in to score. Right. And which they absolutely would have, and it would have been 14-7. And on 3rd and 1, they drop back in an empty set and Goff fumbles and Commanders take over. And then the game, they can never get back in front of them. So anyways, the Commanders defense can be ran all over. And I would just like us to remember that they're playing the best rushing offense in the league on Sunday.
Yeah. Felix makes a good point in the chat. Can't win the game in the first half, but you can lose it.
Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's like he heard that somewhere before. Let's shift gears off the Eagles and Commanders and go into what I think everybody feels is the marquee matchup of the week. It's like the Bills-Ravens last week. It's the last game for a reason. Chiefs-Bills, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. We'll start with like a Styles type of game. I think the over-under is 47.5 on this game. You don't have to give a pick on this, but I just want to get your guys' thoughts. I'll start with Scott here on like what type of game this will be. A classic Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen shootout type, or more of a defensive struggle?
Yeah, these teams are at this point almost mirror images of each other. Like the Chiefs transition to more of a defensive, not run the ball, but the Chiefs transition into a short passing game, control the clock type of team. And the Bills have slowly, with Joe Brady, offensive coordinator, done the same thing. So I don't think this is going to be the 40-36 shootout that we saw in 2021. I do think 47.5 is about right because I think you're going to see it play out similar to the way that the Chiefs-Bills game in the playoff played out last year. Is you have a small number of possessions, but you have 2 of the best quarterbacks on the planet, right? So you're going to see teams go for it a lot on 4th downs, extend drives, and feel like it's really important to get touchdowns instead of field goals, right? Just like the most important play. We saw these 2 teams earlier in the year was 30-21. The most important play of that game was the Bills going for it on 4th and 2, and they could have kicked a field goal. Instead, they go for it and score a touchdown. So I think you're going to see both coaches, McDermott more than Reed, but both coaches say, when we get down past the 50, we've got to score touchdowns. And so you'll see short possessions, but I think a lot of scoring on those possessions.
Yeah, I think, to me, this game is going to come down to whether the Bills can get enough stops against the Chiefs. To me, this game is interesting because the Bills are built to beat the Chiefs. They have an active athletic front that can run. They have active athletic linebackers. Taron Johnson is one of the best nickels in the NFL. He can fit the run. We know that the Chiefs aren't going to line up. Now, the Chiefs do get in 13 personnel, but it's a little different than, like the Lions 13 personnel. So to me, they survived the game they needed to against the Ravens. This is what they were built for. My thing with them, and it's going to be really interesting, they need to stay away from allowing the Chiefs to keep their base personnel on defense out there. If you let Chanel play that kind of flex 3 technique or even move them outside, you let them kind of get into that. They're really, really good in base, stopping the run. They're one of the best defenses in the NFL. But if you can spread them out a little bit, play a little bit more 11 personnel, get them into nickel so that Chanel can't do that whatever spag sprinkle dust that he likes to do. He changes what he does with them all the time. But to me, that's going to be the key. What is the game plan? You can't ugly the game up, like you said, Scott. If you ugly the game up, you're playing into the Chiefs. You almost have to go with what the Commanders did to the Lions and just say, we're going to spread you out. We're going to target one-on-one individual matchups. We're going to go after the corner opposite McDuffie, and we're going to go after your safeties and your linebackers in coverage. If you do that, I think that there's a possibility that you can walk away the winner. But if you ugly the game up, you shorten the game up, you're just letting the Chiefs do exactly what you want them to do.
Yeah. And the big difference, I mean, I think your point about base is really good. The big difference, and I do think it's a big difference in this game versus when they played in week 9, I believe it was, is Jalen Watson being back and the Chiefs' confidence at cornerback. Because if you remember in that game, they had a lot of third down conversions against one-on-one coverage on the outside over the top to Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. And that was at the height of the Chiefs' probably most uncomfortable point with their cornerbacks and seeing a lot of Najee Johnson one-on-one outside. I think Jalen Watson in this game makes a big difference. I think the Chiefs are going to be tighter on defense. And so to your point, like, they're going to feel way more comfortable with the Bills handing it off on first and second down. And then we can win on third down with corners on the outside and what Spags is going to dial up pressure wise. So yeah, it's going to be, I don't know, the game.
Something interesting too, just from the Chiefs. The Chiefs typically blitz their corners a lot. I don't feel like they've done that as much as they have in the past this year. But last year when they played the Bills in the playoffs, they basically blitzed the nickel on almost every play. They just sent somebody off the edge on almost every play. It was crazy. It was like every time they got an 11 personnel, it was like 80%. I posted today on Twitter. It was something crazy. But that's going to be the key. What is the key little flip of the coin that Spags goes with where, hey, we've been showing this all year, but now, and we showed this against you early, but now we're going to completely change it up. And we're going to attack you in a completely different way. To me, that's what I'm excited about, because I know they're not going to run vanilla defense. That's just not what Spags does in the playoffs. So that's going to be, and then inversely, can the Bills handle whenever that comes?
Yeah, and it's interesting because last year that guy blitzing a lot was Trent McDuffie. Now he's outside, and like Trent McDuffie's an elite postseason playmaker. He just is. He's a big game player. He makes plays in big games, and he's been an All-Pro the last 2 years. So like he's just good in general. Obviously, if it's somebody else, does Josh Allen is there a better chance that Josh Allen exploits it? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, and we could talk about this game for hours. I feel like maybe we should, but if you remember that game, the Chiefs could not stop the Bills' run game. Like the Bills more or less ran the ball at will. that game turned on a couple key. I don't want drops. Call them not. Like that perfect pass that Josh Allen threw to Stephon Diggs that he couldn't haul in, right? And so to me, the question is like, can Buffalo lean on Kansas City in the run game as much as they did last year? I think this actually Kansas City run defense is a little bit better.
Yeah, me too.
than it was last year. The pass defense is a little bit worse.
Yeah, and that game actually, it had the potential to not be that close if McCole Hardman doesn't fumble through the end zone at the pylon. So that kind of turned it and closened it back up, and everybody was cursing McCole Hardman, and then he caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl a couple weeks later. So all's well that ends well, I guess.
It was like literally never design a goal line play for McCole Hardman ever again, and then they throw it to him to win the Super Bowl.
The crazy thing is just the random guys the Chiefs have had make huge plays for them in Super Bowls. Like the last 2 Super Bowls, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, and McCole Hardman, none of which are even part of the team right now, at least actively playing.
MVS
all
got a
made huge
touchdown
plays
last year too in the Super Bowl.
Who?
MVS.
Yeah, classic. Just real quick on this, and then we'll take a break and get into picks. How does the history of this matchup kind of play into the team's psyches heading into the game? The Bills have won a bunch of regular season matchups. The Chiefs have won all the matchups in the playoffs. So does it, like, the Chiefs are going to be very confident coming in, and like in football, I tend to think like there's probably no such thing as overconfidence. You'd rather be the team that just expects to win than not. But is there a psychological hurdle for the Bills to overcome to get this win?
100%. You got to beat Mahomes. Until somebody does it, the only person that's been able to do it is Joe Burrow. So,
yeah, I think it matters on both sides. The Chiefs are really confident. Not that the Bills. I mean, it can also. I would argue it can also go the other way, which is like if you have an extreme pent up hatred for a team, like I'm pretty sure the Bills have for the Chiefs, that can help you in a game that's built on aggression. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think this is as coin flippy as it gets. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks in the fourth quarter. And this is the game where you would say the other team has a quarterback that you feel about as comfortable, in the fourth quarter as the Chiefs do with Mahomes. So
there's definitely desperation on the Bills side. And if you coupled that with like complacency on the other side, I'd say you could give an edge to the Bills in terms of the psychological side. But the reality is the Chiefs have been doing this for a while. It's their 7th straight AFC Championship game, and they've never shown they've never shown any complacency. And they've already won 3 Super Bowls, so I don't think that like sneaks up now. So the desperation on the Bills side might help them, but I think that's negated by the confidence on the Chiefs side, and it just comes down to who's a better football team.
I think if there's one schematic or coaching advantage, it's the Chiefs defensive play calling, right? And you get late in that game, and Spags has the ability to be more creative on a big 3rd or 4th down, I think, than McDermott or Bobby Babich does. So I think like that's the one place where I would give the Chiefs the upper hand.
It's interesting that you say that because the Bills have a defensive head coach. The Chiefs obviously have an offensive head coach, but like the Chiefs just they have a great coordinator on defense, and so that plays into their advantage.
Yeah, the thing that I know you're trying to move on. I was gonna say Spags doesn't get enough credit, but he gets a lot of credit. Is he always saves his best play calls for the most pivotal moments, right? Like he's not going to use it on 3rd and 10 early in the first quarter. He's going to use it when you need it, and it's going to be different from what you've seen before. And that's what makes him special when you get in these Super Bowl, San Francisco, 3rd and 4. If they convert, the game's over. Like here comes the play call.
He's calling a game. He's like an offensive play caller. He's calling a game and not just a series.
Right.
And like it's like they talk about offensive play callers getting into rhythms, and you have your 3 plays for 2-point conversions, or the gotta have it 3rd or 4th downs, and he's doing the same thing on the defensive side. So yeah, it's gonna be a good one, fellas. We were gonna get into QB legacies a little bit. I think it's pretty simple. Like if Josh Allen wins and then goes on to win the Super Bowl, he pulls that much closer to Patrick Mahomes, and people probably are starting to have that debate. If Mahomes wins, it just widens the gap that much more, and Mahomes is only chasing one guy, and that's Tom Brady, a guy who doesn't play anymore. So we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll get into our picks for the weekend. We'll do a little Best Bets meeting live, get you behind the scenes for that action. You're listening to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Stay with us. Welcome back into The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Best Bets meeting in progress. I'm going to let Scott lead this conversation as we normally do, and we're going to give you some picks for each of these games coming up this weekend. These are the picks that'll be in the app, so behind the scenes action. And also, just real quick, we welcomed Felix Johnson to the stage. Felix, how you feeling?
I'm fine.
Yeah, Felix loves these meetings.
Are you depressed about the Rams?
A little bit, slightly, because I did have a lot of money invested in them going to the Super Bowl beyond just our playoff challenge and our friendly bet.
Did we bet? What did we bet?
It was $200, but we pushed, so it's fine. We had the same
Rams Eagles.
Yeah, we had the same. Well,
I don't know if that's a push.
No. What our bet was is whose bracket was going to do better. And we put both of our teams in the Super Bowl, both of our NFC teams in the Super Bowl lost in the divisional round.
And but it's still there's still points on the bracket.
All right, fine.
But not for me and Felix, because I think we had both the Chiefs
same bracket,
beating an NFC team that's not still left.
Okay.
Do you have 11? Do you have 11 points right now?
I don't remember what I have. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll diligence this. For some reason, I feel like you're hiding something.
Hiding what?
All right.
Let's dive in, Scott.
All right. So, yeah, we're saving ourselves some time. We're doing our Best Bets meeting live. We're going to start with Commanders Eagles, and I think we're trying to get to 5 bets per game. The decisions we make are going to go in the app. We're going to loosely say that's 3 props we feel really good about, and then a point of view on the game. 3 or 4 props, and then a point of view on either the over-under or the spread of the game. So let's start with the first one. What do you guys like? Eagles Commanders. Just shout it out if you know the answer.
The model likes A.J. Brown quite a bit. Cody, do you think the Eagles are going to have to use A.J. Brown?
Yeah, I think what happened against the Rams, they can't do that again this year, this week. You can't do that 2 weeks in a row. I think A.J. Brown's definitely probably going to go over.
I mean, 16.5 is a pretty low number.
Marshawn Lattimore has not looked good in his brief time with the Eagles, with the Commanders. So, do we feel like A.J. Brown's going to drop deep balls again?
That's a good question.
Well, I think it's just kind of pick your poison either way if you're the Commanders, because it's either A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith.
I don't think you can let A.J. Brown beat you.
Yeah.
But hold on. Of those two, who do we like more?
I mean, I like Brown because he's gonna be able to outmuscle Sainer still, and I think Lattimore is not completely healthy, and I think that you put him against Lattimore. We saw that against Mike Evans. I just think he's a big body receiver. It's a cold playoff game. They've got to throw the ball. They got to get him involved. We've seen this too during the season, that when he doesn't get involved the next week, that they make sure to game plan some touches for him. They can't go 2 weeks in a row and lose out on a Super Bowl because you just didn't get it to your guy.
A.J. Brown was 8 for 97 in the last game against the Commanders. Smith was 6 for 51. And then in the first game against the Commanders.
That is without Jalen Hurts after the second quarter because he got hurt.
It might be counterintuitive too, but Brown's got 24 yards in the playoffs so far. I feel like it's just time for him to have a good game.
Yeah. All right. I'm everyone in favor of A.J. Brown over.
Yeah.
Lock it in. Let's lock it in. Who else you guys like?
I think if we're gonna do that, I think Hurts. I like the Hurts over. I think 182. I think that he probably throws for close to 200.
All right, but
182 seems low, but he's also throws for like 120 yards every game now.
Yeah. If we're going to talk about like Eagles passing numbers, I don't think we're going to take his under, but are we staying away from Saquon's number is 128, which is pretty huge, but been blowing that out of the water.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with that. That's really big. If it was like, we've taken it where it's like at 112 before, but 128 just seems like a little much.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, Cody, you got to test us from a scheme standpoint here, but
Yeah,
if we're saying like Brown over Hurts over, and you're staying away from Saquon at 128, which is that's a huge number in modern football for a running back. You're basically saying like the Commanders know that the only way that they have a shot of this is to try to stop the run.
yeah,
And the Eagles are Eagles are going to adjust and throw it, and they're going to be able to do that quasi effectively.
yeah, and that's my feeling. I think I talked about it earlier. I think they're going to use Luvu as kind of a Ted linebacker on top of the tight end. They're going to drop chin down into the box a lot. Bobby Wagner's a great box linebacker. He's probably the best box linebacker in the NFL right now. So they've got to figure out a way to stop the run, and that's going to be it. That's why I think you're going to see Hurts' numbers be up, and Brown obviously his numbers are going to be up because they're going to be more one-on-ones outside.
Yeah, I'm down for Hurts over passing yards.
What about I don't think we should take 3 on the Eagles offense, but I'll just like, how are the Commanders against tight ends, and what about Dallas Goedert?
Goddard's leading them in receiving in the playoffs.
Does the model likes him? It's got plus 5.9%, although that's just a slightly over neutral matchup.
Yeah, I mean, they give up. They're already averaging over 40 yards a game for Commanders for tight ends. I would totally take that.
What do you like better though, him or Hurts?
And their last,
I think you know what? There is a world where you can go over for AJ Brown and over for Goddard, and he still only passes for 120 yards. So there's your answer.
I almost like Goddard more than I do Hurts.
Me too.
Not that I don't think Hurts can get to 182 yards, but in these days for Hurts, that's like him having a 300-yard game.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and if he goes over and we don't take it, then that means Goddard and Brown probably went over too. So let's just take the 2 pass catchers.
All right, we're taking Goddard and Brown.
Okay.
What
Terry McLaurin under?
Yeah, we took it last week and got burnt. Although we might not have if the Lions could tackle at all.
Right.
Cody, I guarantee you I would have made that tackle out on the edge. There's like 3 guys there.
Just make the tackle.
McLaurin's got the weakest matchup index, but actually Diami Brown is minus 8.3%. We project him for 39.9 on a number of 43.5.
I mean, that's kind of like an Alec Pierce bet, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's either catching a long ball and going over or not. I guess if you were the Eagles defense is engineered to not let him catch a long ball.
Exactly.
I just think 63 is a high number against the Eagles. I don't see him, Kingsbury doesn't move him around enough to where they're not going to know where he's at and be able to manufacture different looks. That's why I think Fandu's going to make sure that he's got some sort of a zone double on him. And like you said, if anybody's going to beat me, it's going to be Diami Brown because, then it's just kind of a fluke deal. This isn't like the Jefferson Addison stuff that we've had of like, okay, is it a Jefferson game or is it an Addison game? This isn't like that. Terry McLaurin's their only guy that they really like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I'm with Cody here in that if there's one thing Fangio's not going to do, he's not going to let McLaren beat him.
I want to also point out that Cody just called him Fandu, so I like that.
Is that like some type of weird marketing partnership with FanDuel?
Yes, I don't know. Sometimes in my
I thought it was
English
like a pet
good.
name for him, like a nickname you had for him.
No, I guess my English isn't very good.
Yeah.
Just learn my words.
I'm sure Cody's stalked him at the combine before.
All right, yeah, I'm down for McLaren under. You got to mix in an under there. So
All right,
I like it.
McLaren under. What else? You guys
Jaden Daniels under.
now you're starting to scare me.
now you're getting crazy.
Let's talk about the let's
Talk about the game first.
What about Jaden Daniels over rushing at 54?
No, that's a huge,
That's too big.
it's a big number. Let's hold on. Let's talk about the game. The model's telling us it likes the Eagles a lot. This line started at 4.5. It very quickly moved to 5.5, and now it's at 6. The Eagles have a quarterback who can't pass. I don't know. Like, what do we think? I said it earlier. I'm very uncertain. Like, I think the Eagles are going to win. I do, but I don't know.
So what? Just take the over?
I'd feel like I think both teams can score on each other.
Yeah. I just know like Philly will probably get up like 21-7 at halftime and then only win the game 28-21 because they did that. What was it? Round 1 against whoever they played. I don't even Green Bay. They stormed back and almost won their got it real close. And then the same thing, they had a game against the Jaguars. I can't remember if it was late in the season, but if you guys remember, it came down to Trevor Lawrence throwing an interception on the goal line, and that was the Jaguars of all teams. So I think this is just a game where, honestly, I would take the Commanders to cover if the model suggested it, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. So, Sasha and Cody, you guys both like the over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say this knowing that it was not true last week. The Eagles love playing 22-20 games that go under. Like they've done that a lot. Now, they played a team in the Rams last week that you could argue is like, profiles similar to the Commanders in terms of like having an offense that can move the ball, and that game went over. Although it like a lot of those points were in the last 4 minutes of the game. I think I'm with you on the over. I'm just saying like it's 47.5 is not a small number when you're talking about the Eagles.
I mean, in that event, like Jaden Daniels he can score in the final 4 minutes of the game too. So I wouldn't be too terribly shocked if the game went over, even if it was 14-14 or something like that, beginning the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'm also checking the weather. It looks like it should be fine this game. It's supposed to be like 39 light wind, so it won't be like a snow game like last week.
Gosh, that's best case scenario for the Commanders. I guarantee the Eagles want it to be freezing ass cold.
Jalen had the quote, rain, sleet, or snow, the Eagles are ready to go.
Trained to go. Eagles trained to go.
Okay, my bad. Excuse
me. But
whose quote was that?
Jalen Hurts, the quarterback of the Philadelphia
Eagles. Eagles
has anyone pried open his head to see if he's an actual human?
No, somebody called it a Dr. Bruce ass quote.
That guy's a robot. He's so boring.
So makes him good.
He's all right. He's fine.
I mean,
all right.
He's not. Let's just be clear. He's not that good, Cody.
I didn't say he's good. I said great. I said that's what makes him good.
All right. I'm fine with the over. I'm fine with the over. Let's take a point of view on the game. We should take a point of view on the game, unless someone feels really strongly about another prop.
I think the Eagles win 31-21. I think they win by 2 scores.
You said that about the Lions last week.
Yeah, but Amick Robertson gets hurt. The whole game changes. You lose two of those. The only reason why that secondary even worked was because of those two guys. You take them out, and it's like, okay, well, then it's just a free for all.
Do we have any concern? Sorry, listeners. This is the role I play in these best bets meetings. I just ask a bunch of annoying questions. Do we have any concern about Hurts's health?
No.
He said it last week. He said he's full go. I just don't think he had an opportunity to run because it was a freaking snowstorm. Why would you not just hand it off to Saquon who's just going off?
Yeah. I think we got to trust the model. It has the Eagles to win by 8 points.
All right. We're calling it. That was good.
It's going to backfire on me on this next game.
Here's what we're going for the listeners. The Eagles to cover 6 points as it stands right now. If that improves in our favor, we'll take it. The game to go over 47.5. A.J. Brown over 60.5 receiving yards. Dallas Goedert over 37.5 receiving yards. And Terry McLaurin under 63.5 receiving yards. Book it.
All right. Let's go to the Chiefs Bills. The moment we've all been waiting for. The mental gymnastics Scott and I are going to try to create to get us to pick the Chiefs right now, because the model, just for the listeners at home, projects the Bills right now 25 to 23.9.
Yeah, model loves the Chiefs. If you're listening and you don't, sorry, model loves the Bills. Some people on this podcast love the Chiefs. Model loves the Bills. If you're not in our model a lot, this is one of the bigger spreads we've ever seen in terms of the model liking one team over the other. Chiefs are currently 1.5 point favorites at home, which means, depending on how you calculate it, Vegas either thinks the two teams are even, or Vegas thinks the Bills are a point better on a neutral field. But the Chiefs have home field advantage. I'm just going to log this. There is some question as to how much that 38-0 Week 18 Denver game, which is one of the most recent games for the Chiefs, factors into the model's projection a little bit. I'm just going to say it. So with that, I'll start you. What do you guys like in this game?
But he doesn't like that.
I like the Bills to cover.
Well, we'll get to that cover question later. You guys like any props?
I got one that's a little off the wall, and it might not be that crazy. I kind of like Patrick Mahomes' rushing yards over 27, or we have it at 27 yards in the app, and we kind of talked about it throughout the week. Patrick Mahomes, when games matter the most, what does he do? He scrambles around, even if he has a bum ankle, like we saw a couple years ago. And so I think him going over whatever that number is, I'm not sure what it is.
25.5 probably.
So
based on math.
I actually don't buy that. I like that more than taking his passing over at 151.
251.5
or 251. Sorry, yeah, 251.
If it was 151, we'd hammer it.
Yeah, the only I don't hate it, Felix. But they did spy him in week 9 when the Chiefs Bills plays. They had a spy running around Mahomes almost the whole time, and he never got loose on the ground. So I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume that they're going to do that again. I'm not saying that doesn't mean he can't still go over this number, and we've known Mahomes to use his legs in the biggest games and in the moments that matter the most. But it's something to watch out for.
That's the only reason why I do it.
I think similarly to your point about Jalen Watson being there for the Chiefs defense, they now have Hollywood Brown, who hadn't been there all year long. And so that does kind of diversify their passing game. I mean, we'll see how much that changes, because we didn't see too much of it last week against the Texans, but they may have to throw another body towards the passing game as opposed to keeping eyes on Mahomes.
No, I think you're spot on. They're not going to be able to spy. They're going to have to play a little bit more coverage. I think they would be okay if Mahomes gets 30 yards rushing. I think that they'll be fine. That's not a you're not getting some chunk yards through the passing game.
I also think like spying, if they do spy, that takes like you're using a linebacker to do that. That takes resources away from guarding the greatest playoff tight end of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce.
Which we know the biggest, and we can talk about Kelce. An interesting stat. Travis Kelce has gone over 70 yards in 14 straight playoff games.
Right.
His over under last week was 52.5, which we took, and he'd blown through that midway through the second quarter. The line has rightfully adjusted to 69.5. So it went up a lot. But I think the thing that I'm thinking about is last week the Chiefs completed like only one receiver caught a ball. Xavier Worthy was the only receiver that caught a ball. Everything else went through Travis Kelce. I'm guessing the Bills adjust and don't let that happen. And so, but I'm wondering out loud, like, do we see the receivers getting off a little bit more in this game against Buffalo? And the model likes Hopkins. It likes Hollywood Brown. It likes Hopkins the most. Yeah. Noah Gray also not a bad option.
I like what you said. I like if you want to take a chance, the Kelce under, I don't think is a terrible bet. And I know you guys think it's crazy, but I don't think it's a crazy bet.
We can't think it's over because the model says under, but I'm not taking Kelce under.
I would not. I do not think taking the Kelce under is a smart thing to do. But if you believe the Bills are going to do the things to limit Travis Kelce, then you got to believe that there's going to be receivers open. I guess the point I was trying to make.
Did he have a catch against them earlier this year?
Yeah, he had like 2 for 4 yards.
Okay.
They had him in the garage though. They weren't even trying to use him.
Yeah. And that's kind of why this game would point me in the Chiefs' direction, because they had Travis Kelce in the garage. What else did they have in the garage? Everything else. So, especially against the Bills.
I would, if it were me, and I know it's a low number and the model with lower volume players isn't as strong, but like I like DeAndre Hopkins over 23.5.
I do too. I think they kind of kept him. If there was a rule or like a something in the trade with the Titans that if he didn't play over like 50% of the snaps, they would turn into a 3rd round pick or something like that. So yeah, I think that's the Chiefs were doing both things, where they're keeping him down and getting a better draft pick, but also just resting.
That said, though, he barely played against Houston too.
That's what would worry me about that too.
They're
about
playing 2 tight ends almost every play. Do you like? But then playing a lot of 12 personnel.
The model like Noah number 2, even though it's only 13.5.
I mean, I'm trying to think about. I don't think this is a game where the Chiefs are trying to ground them out or like grind them out on the ground.
No,
I think they're going to have to pass the ball.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm down for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. Which of the well, I don't know if that's the right way to ask it. I was just going to say, like, you got Hopkins, Brown, and Worthy. Like, who do we think has the best matchup? Who do we think the Chiefs use to get going in the passing game?
They had a shot to Brown that nearly connected had he caught the ball against the Texans. So I don't know if they're going to go back to the well on that.
Model doesn't like Worthy. Model doesn't like Worthy and Kelce. It likes Hopkins and Brown, and I think the reason's pretty, like, the reason is the Bills are going to try to like funnel everything in the short and intermediate parts of the field, right?
Yeah.
We're going round and round here. We got to make like
I think we should take Hopkins over. And on the note of the Patrick Mahomes rushing over, the model likes Josh Allen's rushing over too.
I like the Josh Allen rushing over.
I would be
designed running the hell out of it against the Ravens.
I would be fine taking Allen rushing over and Mahomes rushing over. That's traditionally the way that the Bills have moved the ball really effectively against the Chiefs, is deploying Josh Allen.
Yeah.
What about we have to talk about it because it's the most exaggerated negative matchup in the game. What about Khalil Shakir under?
I was going to mention that. I actually like that. I think if I'm Spagnuolo, I understand that the one guy on that offense that's a receiver that can hurt me, he's the best receiver. Amari Cooper at some point has to show up. I would just challenge him. Hey, show up. Keon Coleman, make a big play when it matters. To me, let's let those guys try and beat us. We think we can handle them. Let's take Shakir away in the intermediate.
And Shakir gets like 80% of his yards after the catch. And the Chiefs secondary has been pretty good tackling. So
yeah, and two, they're not going to play. This isn't one of those situations. Don't get lulled into the fact that we think that the Chiefs are going to start playing a bunch of man like they did last year. I think that was a completely different situation. I think, again, they really only did it against the Ravens and the 49ers. They're going to play zone. They're going to get eyes on Allen. They're going to make sure Shakir can't beat him in the underneath. And that as soon as you catch a ball, you're getting tackled. And look, if you're going to win, go throw hero balls outside, which are low percentage.
Yep.
Against their long corners.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
Johnson being back is huge. I think that changes the matchup completely for Spags, at least.
Right. I mean, that's what I was going to say is, Cody, what you just described is what the Chiefs did in week 9. They were just not strong enough at the corner position to hold up. And the Bills made a couple plays outside.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to believe that Jalen Watson makes a big difference, which we know statistically he does.
Yes. And I also think what I said earlier in the game, I think this is an 11 personnel game for the Bills. I don't think it's a 12 personnel game and bring in an extra tackle and let the Chiefs kind of lean into that base personnel. I think they're going to have to spread them out. They're going to have to attack space, which means that for the Chiefs, the answer is to make sure Shakir can't go off in the slot.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's the strongest signal we have too. So
yeah.
All right. I think we should take it. So we have four props potentially for 3. Let's talk about the game.
Which I like having 4 props because we don't need to take the game. We just take the over and call it a day.
If y'all feel comfortable with that, let's just take the over.
I've never felt more comfortable with anything in my life, Cody.
I mean, I would be fine taking the Bills plus 1.5, assuming we're saying the Chiefs are going to win by 1.
If that allows you to
but at that point,
tonight,
why not just bet on an exact score? Like, I bet it's going to end up 27-26.
Yeah, 25-24
plus 10,000.
Which, I mean, it wouldn't be that crazy to believe that because last year, how did the game end? Tyler Bass missed a field goal that could have changed the game one way or another. And then, I mean, Mahomes probably would have got the ball back with like 40 seconds on the clock or something like that. But still, it would have been pretty interesting.
Yeah. So hold on. And let's just full caveat for the listeners. You got some people from Kansas here on the call. You got some, like, you can say Kansas homers, but also let's be honest. Betting on Mahomes in the playoffs is probably the smartest thing you could have done from a betting standpoint for any bet you could have made over the last 6 years, right? And Mahomes with a tight spread, to be honest with you, at home or in the road is one of the safest bets you could have ever made in football, right? And so I get that the Bills are 1.5 point dogs and the model likes them, right? And I am not opposed to us saying let's take the Bills in the spread. You have to believe the Bills are going to win. And so, like, to me, the conversation we need to have is, like, do we believe the Bills are enough better than this Chiefs team to go into Arrowhead and win? Like, that's the key. That's the key question. Cody, it sounds like you have the floor. It sounds like you do.
Yeah, I do. I think that this is a different Bills team that we've seen. I think it's a more of a complete team. I know people are like, well, they don't have any star power out at receiver. I would argue that they do. Shakir, I think, is one of the better slots. He just doesn't get named that because he's not on the outside. He's not coming up with sexy numbers. A lot of his stuff is yak, but it's all kind of manipulated. I think they have a really good run game. They can do different things. They can get in 11 personnel and spread you out. They can get in 12 personnel and pound the rock. I like Josh Allen. I like the way that he's playing. I think they match up well against the Chiefs. I said this earlier. I think that defense was designed to stop the Chiefs. They got through the Ravens. They survived the game they needed to survive, and now they are there. It's an active front. They're athletic everywhere. They play a ton of zone coverage. If there's one weakness, it's probably at the safety position. But they've been able to kind of live through that, survive through that. That's why I think if it's going to come down to it, it's probably going to come down to a field goal. And that's why I think the Bills, I would take the Bills and with the +1.5. I also understand your argument of don't bet against Mahomes, which is why if you want to, I'm totally okay with, because I think both these teams are going to score, and I think the game goes over 48.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to quickly make the counter argument, which is and I'm going to use the argument that I made for why the Bills were going to beat the Ravens last week. The Bills were at home. When they played in the regular season, they had a lot of key contributors out that affected the game adversely. The Bills were the better team all year, and they have the quarterback that we trusted more in the playoffs. And what I would say is that most of that came to fruition, which is to say, like, Baltimore couldn't execute the game plan that they executed in the regular season. A, because the Bills adjusted, and because B, they had some guys that were back. The Bills were at home, and they had the quarterback to trust more because Lamar made 2 turnovers in the first quarter or the first half. The thing I'm struggling with is all of those same arguments apply to the Chiefs. The Chiefs are at home. The Chiefs, at least by record, right, were the superior team for most of the season. The Bills beat the Chiefs, but we've already discussed ad nauseum some of the folks that were out on the Chiefs. And I love Josh Allen. I trust Patrick Mahomes more in the playoffs. So that's the thing I'm struggling with. The only other thing I'm going to throw out at you, 4 units in this game. I think the unit that is the weakest is the Bills defense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and the Chiefs have an edge on special teams.
That's why I said if you feel more comfortable, let's take the over.
I just don't feel comfortable. To be honest with you, I don't feel comfortable picking the game either way.
Yeah, no, I want the Bills to win. I'd love for the Bills to win a Super Bowl. I love Josh Allen. My wife loves Josh Allen. So it's like I get that. But I'm also a realist, and I understand that the Chiefs are at home. The Chiefs are usually inevitable. So picking this game, this is 100% a push. I think the deficiencies on both teams, kind of equal out each other. And then the strengths of both teams are kind of equal out each other. So to me, this is, again, like you said at the beginning, Vegas either thinks the Bills are barely a little bit better, or just this is a push.
Do we like the over?
I like the over. I'm going to jump in for a second here. I know, Scott, you've run a marathon before, but today's not the day to do it again. So I think we go with the over. Pat and Allen over rushing, Hopkins over receiving, and Shakir under.
Fine.
Good with it.
You don't feel like the listeners want to listen to us for an hour and a half?
Oh, the ones who do are the ones listening right now. So,
yes.
Proud of you guys.
Well, you just got 10 free picks for your DraftKings or FanDuel or ESPN bet account.
Check them out on the app. Check us out on X at Field Vision MI. Scott might get in some Twitter fights this week. like he did with Ravens fans last week. Check us out at Field Vision Sports on Instagram, fieldvisionsports.com. Check out the website, download the app, see all our best bets. For Felix, the Coach A, and Scott, I'm Sasha. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Cody, you want to go couple hundies straight up on Bills Chiefs?
I don't bet. No way. I'm tight. I keep my money.
All right. I'm hopping in the ice bath.